That's sort of a reductio ad absurdum, isn't it? It's just barking mad. And yet that's the implication. Okay, now how does the Chicago school fit in on this? They're the free enterprise school. They adopt all of this crap, and what they say is, look, antitrust costs money. True, who could deny it? You have to have courts, you have to have lawyers, this and that and the other. And sometimes the deadweight loss is bigger than the cost of pursuing it, in which case we should pursue it. Get it? And in other cases, the costs of pursuing it are bigger than deadweight loss, and we shouldn't. You see what free enterprises they are? They're saying just because you have deadweight loss doesn't mean you should have an antitrust suit. Now I have to tell you my antitrust joke, and I told this to a bunch of people who were lawyers and economists, all specializing in antitrust. I have a friend, Ben Klein. He was a professor at UCLA, and he used to specialize in money. And then one day he told me, there's no money in money. You can't make much money studying money. Where is the money? Antitrust cases. Mises said to his wife, I'll be studying money, but I'll never have much of it. That was a quote from Mises to Margaret, his wife. Well, there's not really that much money in money. There's a little bit, and people have done studies on just who supports the Fed. Guess. Economists have been paid, stuffed down their throat with a lot of money from the Fed in terms of going to five-star hotels here and there and being able to bring their wives or significant others. So there's a little bit of money in money, but the real money is in antitrust. So here's the antitrust joke. It's a two-part joke. And the first part is there were 3 Soviet prisoners. And as prisoners do, you people know, you've been in prison, you talk to your buddy, why are you in jail, why are you in jail? And the first guy said, I was in jail because I came to work late. And they accused me of cheating the state out of my labor services. Okay, fine. The second guy said, I came to work early every day, and they accused me of brown-nosing. You know what brown-nosing is? Okay. The third guy said, I came to work exactly on time every day, and they accused me of owning a Western wristwatch. So they put me in jail. And I got a big laugh out of the economists and lawyers and other people who batten off antitrust cases, whether on the plaintiff or the defendant's side. And then I told the other joke. I said there were 3 prisoners in jail in the US because of antitrust violations. And as prisoners do, they were comparing notes. And the first guy said, I charged higher prices than everyone else, and they accused me of profiteering and gouging. Second guy said, I charged lower prices than everyone else, and they accused me of collusion and cutthroat competition and predatory pricing. And the third guy said, I charged the same prices as everyone else. It's hard to see how he did given these other 2 guys, but what the heck, it's just a joke. You know, you got to give me a little leeway. And they accused me of collusion and cartelization. The point is, no matter what you do, they can accuse you of an antitrust violation. Look, the law of murder and the law of rape are legitimate laws. You murder, you go to jail. You don't murder, you don't go to jail. You rape, you go to jail. You don't rape, you don't go to jail. But with antitrust, no matter what you do, they can get you. Poor Bill Gates. He was out there in the boonies in Washington State, minding his own business, creating nerddom and whatever he was doing. And he wasn't paying off the boys in Washington. By the way, I think 7 out of the 10 richest counties in the country are all around Washington. It's just a coincidence. It's inexplicable why that should be. The money goes there and comes back minus a little bit from the boys in Washington. And Bill Gates wasn't paying off either. You're supposed to pay off both, like Donald Trump. He would pay off the Democrats, pay off the Republicans. That's what a good businessman did. So they launched an antitrust suit against them. Why not? They're going to get him on something, higher, lower, the same prices, whatever. They'll get him. Murray Rothbard went through economic history, and he said there were certain presidents that were Morgan presidents, and they would go after the Rockefeller companies. And then when a Rockefeller president got in, he'd go after the Morgan companies. It's just a crock. It's dead from the neck up. It's incoherent. No matter what you do, they can get you. And yet the mainstream love it. Getting back to an intermediate microtext, you got 2 or 3 or 4 chapters. Well, there's monopoly, and then there's Herfindahl index, there's oligopoly, duopoly, this opoly, that opoly, and they just love this stuff. The more concentrated you are, the worse. You start out, how did McDonald's start out? It was just 1 store or 2 stores, and then it spread out because they served the public and made a good product and at a low price, and they outcompeted whatever was in the market. And now they can be subject to monopolization. So that's a sharp distinction between Austrians and mainstream. Tom DiLorenzo has done a lot of good work on that. I'm not sure if he's speaking about this subject this time, but if you read him, he's good on that one. Okay, what else do we have? Let's try transitivity and rationality and indifference. Another thing that the mainstream love are indifference curves. There are always indifference curves. Here is an indifference curve. There's a good 1. There's good 2. There's indifference curve 1 and indifference curve 2. And here's a budget line. And here we have another budget line. And we get a, what do you call it? Giffen good, the way you get a Giffen good, and the income effect and the substitution effect and all that stuff. The Austrians reject this entirely. Not entirely. It's sort of like chess for economics, namely irrelevant but fun. If you're weird and you like this stuff, there's nothing wrong with it per se as a mathematical exercise. But the problem is with indifference. There is no way to establish indifference. I bought this watch for 20 bucks. I demonstrated or revealed that I valued the watch at more than 20 bucks. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought it for 20 bucks. In the ex ante sense. Ex post, I might not value it at more than 20. It might not keep good time. But at the time I bought it, I valued it at more than 20 bucks. More than. The guy who sold it to me valued it at less than 20 bucks. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken 20 bucks for the watch. How can you establish indifference? You can't. Now here I had a big long debate with Brian Kaplan on indifference, because he wrote a thing, Why I'm Not an Austrian Economist, and one of the things was, he loves indifference, and Guido Holzman and I and about 5 others all attacked him in, I think it was the Eastern Economic Journal. They wouldn't publish any of our critiques. They only published his attack on Austrianism. Well, that's the mainstream, they don't like to have debates, because they lose. This reminds me of another story. I'll get back to this in a second. What happened was some jerks published an article saying, why is Austrian economics wrong? And the proof was there are fewer Austrians than there are mainstreamers. Can you imagine that? I mean, this was a serious article. It was published in a journal. Sherwin Rosen, a Chicago economist, I think it was him, published an article saying that the proof that Austrianism is wrong is that there are fewer Austrians than mainstream. I mean, can you imagine when the first guy said that the earth revolved around the sun and not the other way around, and people said, well, you're wrong because more people believe the other way around? This is science? Democracy? You take a nose count as to who believes what, and that's the truth? So my co-authors and I said, look, this is crazy, and we gave all sorts of cases where the minority turned out to be right. But if you want an objective test of which is right, we've got an objective test. And we think that it's also wrong, but we're trying a reductio ad absurdum. And what we said is that the last guy in a debate is the winner. And we got all sorts of debates between Austrians and mainstreamers, and we got like 175 debates, and I think we had the last article in about 110 of them. So I said, on that basis, Austrianism is right. Now, obviously, that's just as silly, right? Because, some people die in the middle of a debate, and they can't reply, so you can't say, well, just because he died, or he doesn't think it's worthwhile, because you can't, look, my articles are attacked by a lot of people, and I can't reply to all of them. There are so many. So some of them get the last word on me. So we're not seriously saying that he who gets the last word in a debate is the winner, but we're saying it's just as good as counting noses to see who is the rightful winner, who is correct in economics. Okay, getting back to indifference. There's no way to establish indifference. Because every time you do anything, you establish preference. There's only preference. Look, you people are all here. You could have been at one of the other debates, one of the other presentations. You could have been out bicycling or swimming or sleeping or eating or God knows what you could have been doing, but you're here. So you establish that you prefer this. Now, you might change your mind after you hear this nonsense emanating from the front of the room, but at the time you chose, I get that stuff from David Gordon. He tells me I have to do that. There's only preference. Look, here are 2 bottles of water, and a lot of people pick, which one do you want? And most people would say, well, I'm indifferent. I don't really care which bottle. They're both perfectly good bottles of water. You see, the problem is that the word indifference is a perfectly good word in the English language. And it applies to things like this. And Brian Kaplan says, this shows indifference. And I say, no, it doesn't. Because what you're going to do is you're going to pick this one. Why did I pick this one? Oh, it's closer. Or maybe I picked this one, it's further away, and I need the exercise to... I don't know, but the point is, you all have bottles of water, you all have things that are sort of homogeneous, and you picked one of them, right? You've got a few bottles of water. Why did you pick those when there could have been others? Well, who knows? You just sort of close your eyes and pick a bottle of water. But you picked that one, that shows you preferred it for some reason or other. Now look, we have a technical language in economics, and we also have an ordinary language. Ordinarily, I don't have no objection to the word indifference. It's a fine word. But as a matter of technical economics, it's all wrong. Let me give you an analogy from physics. In physics, work equals mass times distance. Namely, you have to move an object through a certain distance, and that's what work is. Now, suppose these are 20-pound barbells, and I hold them like this. What's going to happen? I'm going to start sagging soon, because it's hard to keep weights up at this angle, and the sweat is going to start dripping down my face. And in ordinary language, we would say, I'm working. That's a good exercise. Instead of lifting weights this way, you try this too. It really burns these muscles, and it's very, very hard, even 5 pounds. Try holding 5 pounds for 1 minute, and you're going to be sweating and breathing heavily. So you're working. But in physics, are you working? No. Because assuming it's rigid, there's no movement of anything, there's no work. So in physics, they have an ordinary language and a technical language. Well, in economics, we can do that too. You've heard of penis envy? There's physics envy. Physics envy is what economists have that want to make economics like physics, like testable hypotheses and stuff like that, whereas we Austrians, there are certain hypotheses that are testable, namely elasticity of shoes, as I mentioned, but there are others, namely the synthetic a priori, apodictic statements that are not testable. So to get back to indifference curves, the reason we reject indifference curves is because indifference is not a proper economic element. And then they're used for all sorts of nefarious purposes. They come up with Giffen goods, which means an upward sloping demand curve. But the whole problem with that is that when you have a demand curve, everything else is supposed to be constant.